Tomu Artbox. My name is Deborah, and this is another Design With Me tutorial. Now, for those of you that haven't been to my channel, welcome. I normally do tutorials about anything based on art, whether that be drawing, sewing, or animating, or anything that I can teach you, I will try to. I did do one on Illustrator that was just how to get familiar with Illustrator, and this one is going to be about how to get familiar with InDesign. Now, for a little background, I am a graphic designer by trade. That is my full-time career. And I like to share some of the knowledge that I have in terms of the Adobe programs. Am I an expert? By no means. Adobe always changes every day. Technology is always changing. It's fast-paced, but I can show you what I know. So, without further ado, let's open the InDesign program. Now, I'm using InDesign 2021. Yours might be 2022, or a newer version, or an older version. Either way, you can follow along. It hasn't changed so much that you wouldn't know, like that things might be in a different place, but overall, it's pretty much the same thing. So a little history about InDesign, Photoshop, and Illustrator. They actually used to do separate things. So Photoshop was basically, you knew that you used Photoshop for web. Anything web was Photoshop related. And then Illustrator was like anything you want to design a logo or anything that needs to be blown up big and it has to be vector, you do it in Illustrator. And then InDesign was like your main program for laying out magazine layouts, newspaper layouts, banners, posters, that kind of thing. Although some people used Illustrator to lay out posters and things like that, I personally liked InDesign when I was in school. And actually, when I was in school, InDesign didn't really exist. I actually had to use Quark Express, which was not as intuitive as InDesign. So now with InDesign open, I don't want you to get overwhelmed with it, but now with InDesign open, I can tell you that a lot of these programs are starting to become cross-platform. And what I mean by that is that InDesign is now allowing you to lay out for web and layout for iPads, layout for things that are intuitive for today's world. So it doesn't just do print. It is not just a layout program anymore. It is basically a program, yes, you lay out, but it's for web as well as print. So you can do both. You can do dual purpose with this now. And the same thing goes for a lot of like Illustrator too. Like you can bring in vector art from Illustrator just by copy pasting from Illustrator to InDesign, which before you couldn't do. You'd have to place. I won't get into it. There's a lot of intuitiveness in these programs and there's a lot of ways to do things, but this is how I do things. So when you open the program, you're going to see a lot of things. On my screen right now, you're seeing basically what I was working on before in InDesign. So my recent projects, things that I had done before, like my Banff itinerary and a resume and my sticker shop stuff. So for this project, it's going to be me trying to lay out my stickers on a sticker sheet, but more to show you how to place things in InDesign, how, where the tools are for certain things. It's not going to be fully extensive. It'll be very much the basics of InDesign to help you kind of learn what it does. So right away when you open and you're at home, I have these preset. So mine says letter, which I use often because sometimes I create letter documents and whatnot. Then iPad Pro, which I don't use as much, but it's basically if you want to lay out like a web design in an iPad Pro sizing. And then web is if you want to lay out a web page or a UI UX design in this program for desktop. So like 1920 by 1080 pixels is about the size of a desktop, like a Firefox browser or Chrome browser. When you do UI UX design, I wouldn't use this program to do it. They do have an Adobe XD, which is pretty much the UI UX design program for Adobe, or you can use Figma, which a lot of people have used. I personally haven't really dove too deep into those programs, but I probably should at some point, and I will. So for this project that I'm doing, if you go under more presets here, the three dots right over here, you'll see that it has recent. So these are all recent sizings that I've used. Saved ones, which I don't have any right now. Print, web, and mobile. Now, for this project, I'm not using web or mobile. But if you were to use it, it does have preset sizes for letter A4 and whatnot. And then for mobile, it has the different phone sizes and the iPad sizes to design with. We're going to use print because mine is basically a 4x6 sticker sheet that I want to set up. And this is the project that I want to start with. But the same rules will apply to web and mobile. They have the same presets on the right-hand side. So let's go to print. Now, right off the bat, I have letter here, but that's not what I want. And the units that I want to measure in, because picas and points are more like really, they're for print and fonts and stuff like that. I like using inches, so we're going to go with inches. Now, my sheet, I want it to be landscape orientation. So you can change it from portrait to landscape over here. And I'm going to get it to be 6 by 4 inches. I only want one page, and I don't want it to be facing pages. So facing pages over here is, say you have a magazine and you have a double page spread of a magazine. You want to design something that's 2 pages side by side. This is what facing pages does. So if you're creating, say, like a booklet, like a big magazine or a booklet, facing pages is what you would want to have checked off. But because I'm only creating one sticker sheet, I am going to uncheck that. Now, number of pages, only want 1. Start number 1 is fine. Columns and column gutters. So columns is like if you're in, like you're making a newspaper and the newspaper has the text columns. I know that's very old school. A lot of newspapers are going online now, but say you were doing something in print that required you to have text columns. This is where you would put in the number of columns you would want on a page, and the spacing between those columns would be the gutter. Now, I'm not doing any columns. We just want 1, which is the big box. So I only want 1 column here. Margins is kind of like your safety. So say you're getting something printed and you don't know where to design where it won't get cut off. Well, your margin is basically a safety. It tells you where is safe to design within the box. Usually with margins, I think the safest thing is probably about 1/4 of an inch. I like to do about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch, so I'm going to do 0.25, which is 1/4. And I'm going to check this here, this link, which will create all of my margins, top, bottom, left, and right, to 1/4 inch. Now, if I wanted the margins to be different, I would just unclick the link and then change one of the margins to 0.5. But that's not what we want to do. We want it all to be 0.25. So, bleed. Now, if I want bleed, I'm going to try and explain bleed. Bleed is pretty much if you have a magazine and you're designing to the point that it has to go to the edge. Bleed basically ensures that when the booklet is cut, you're not going to get a white strip of line because it wasn't cut exactly on the trim mark of the page. You basically bleed off of the page so that when it's cut, even if it cuts a little bit off, like a millimeter off, your design is still going to be there. There's not going to be a white strip there because you didn't bleed it off the page, and that's what bleed is. So for bleed, usually I do about 1/8 of an inch. Some people do more. Some magazines, like if you're doing advertisement as a graphic designer, they'll give you specifications. They'll say they want your safety to be this. They want your bleed to be this. They want your stage to be a specific size. So this panel that I'm showing you right now, this is where you would do all of that. So say they want your bleed to be 1/8 of an inch, so we'll put 125, and that is 1/8 of an inch. Slug, I don't need to worry about because I'm not doing that. And then now we'll click Create. So once you're in the program, it may not look the way mine looks. I have mine set to a workspace that's advanced. You can set yours to advanced as well, or you can even create your own workspace. The way to do that is go to Windows and pick the things that you want to show up on this side of the stage. Now, the windows will be open like this, probably worse. If you want to minimize them, you can go up top to these little arrows to collapse the icons, and then they'll look something like this, or they'll look something like that. I like them looking like this so that I can still read what is on this side. So, now that we're on the stage, I'm going to explain to you all the presets that we just did. The bleed. That red line there, that's the bleed. So the bleed is basically your design here. If I create a box, would have to go off the page here. So that when you're trimming, you see how the box goes off the page. If, say, I was to not put a bleed, and I wanted the design to go off the page, and then they cut the book, and it's 1 millimeter off, this is what will happen. You get a white space right here, which is what I was explaining. So that part is the bleed. This purple line over here is your margin, or safety. So anywhere in here for text and anything that isn't imagery that needs to bleed off the page would go in this box here. This is your safety. If you design a little bit off, it's fine as long as it's not like around 1/8 of an inch off the page. But this is your safety. This is my safety. This is what I had set for mine. So the tools in InDesign. I'm not going to explain all of them, only going to explain the ones that we are using in this project. So the selection tool here, this moves things around. So if I'm creating a box and I need it to move, I use this tool to move it. This tool here, the direct selection tool, if I create a box, this one I move everything. This one though, if I select one anchor point, I can move that one anchor point. So that's what this one does. It selects only certain anchor points within the shape or within the image, depending on what you're doing. This one I don't really use, the gap tool. This one I don't really use, content collector tool. I know what they do, but I'm not going to explain those because we're not using it in this project. The text tool, you should know what that is. It's basically you drag the box and then you can type whatever you want. You can choose a font up here. There's 2 ways to choose fonts. You can choose it here, or you can go over here and go to your character and choose your font, choose your sizing, you know, make it smaller, make it bigger. If you're not seeing this character tool, this character box over here, this thing, you're going to want to go to Window, Type, and then Character, and that'll pop, like it'll make this box pop up and you can drag it into your toolbar on this side. You can also take these tools and move them around as well. So they don't have to be in this bar. You can move them around, but I find it more organized when you drag and drop it on this toolbar. So for this one, there's the text tool. There's also other tools like the Type on Pathfinder tool. I won't explain this. This is basically, like, I'll explain it briefly. It's basically when you have a shape and you want to type like following the path of the shape, that's what that tool does. It types on the path, but you just want to use the type tool. That's the line tool. Pen tool, you know, that can pretty much draw whatever you want in the program. But again, that's more, to be honest, Illustrator is probably better to do your vector logos and things in. I don't like doing it in this program. Then they have the pencil tool, rectangular frame tool, and the rectangular tool. So right off the bat, you'll notice I'm using the rectangle tool to explain some things like this, and making shapes. So that's what it does. It just makes shapes. Now, when you highlight over the rectangle tool, there's also ellipse and polygon. With most programs with these shapes, if you're making a shape and you hold down Shift, it'll make a square. If you hold down this ellipse and you hold down Shift again, it'll make a circle. And that goes with polygon as well. That'll make a perfect polygon that is the same measurement. So if you look up here, it says 1.35 by 1.35 inches, which is perfect. So anytime you want to make a perfect shape, you hold down Shift and then you drag your mouse across using that tool highlighted. Now in the program, you'll see that they'll show you the shortcuts. So M and L, that one doesn't have one. And then they have the frame tool as well. This is a box where you can drag and drop images into, and that's what we'll be doing shortly. So scissors tool where you can cut things out. They have rotation tool, freeform, scale, shear. These are all good. Like rotation basically rotates the image. Free transform, you can rotate it and do things with it. Scale is basically scaling an item, and shearing is basically side to side. Gradient, this is another gradient tool, but it feathers the gradient on an image, which means that, let me show you what a gradient tool does first. So let's pick a color here. I'll pick green, and I will do, hang on. So that's what that tool does. It creates a little gradient here. Now, the gradient feather tool is basically like if you have an image, it'll make part of the image transparent and then the other part of it translucent. Note tool, eyedropper tool is good too. Eyedropper tool will take a style from something else and apply it. So if I say, hi, my name is Deborah, in one box, and then I copy paste that into another box and say I have this as Sweet Talk, and I want this font to be the same thing. So I would take my type tool, I would highlight this, use the eyedropper tool and click it, and it applies the same style as the style below. It's one of the things the eyedropper tool does. This hand tool just grabs the stage, you can move it around. And then there's the zoom in, zoom out tool. There's more tools than this. These are the basic tools that you'll need. Down below, there's the color tool for shapes. So if you're making a rectangle, the inside is green, the outline is black. If you double click this, you can change the color however you like. Okay, purple in, and then black out. And then you can switch from shape to type here, apply color, view options, and here you can have the stage viewed as normal, which is what we're doing right now. You can have the stage viewed as preview, so this is how it looks when the whole stage is trimmed. If you're doing a magazine and they cut off everything, this is what it would look like. Usually when you want to see the finished product of your item, this is where you would go and you would do preview. You can view it with the bleed, which will give you the outside, which is not going to be printed. And then you can view it with the slug, which we didn't apply. And you can view it in presentation. But I only do basically normal in preview. So we'll delete this. Now, some other important tools you'll want to know are the ones up here. If you don't have this toolbar, I think it's under view. I'll put it in text later where it is. I can't remember. But for this box, this here represents this box. So say, or any object that you've selected. So say you click this anchor point. Well, this anchor point is mirrored to this anchor point here. And that basically means that it's going to move from this anchor point. So if I want to move it to, say, the position X of 0, it's going to move it to 0, where my ruler is set. So my ruler is set to 0, 0 at the corner here. If I want to move it in the middle, like say I want to change the size is going to change and scale from the middle. So if say I want to have it at 1 inch, it'll resize it in the middle. If say I want to resize it, but then I only want to resize from one corner of it, then again, if I do 1 inch, it'll resize from the corner, from this corner here. So that's what this grid is, and the X and Y positions, the width and height positions. The link is basically scaling things 100%. If you don't want the size to scale 100%, you can take that off, and then you can do what you want with the shape. And again, you can scale it percentage-wise. You can rotate it 90 degrees if you want, or 10 might show better. Okay. And then if you want, you can flip it horizontally, flip it vertically. And there's a bunch of other tools on here. One of the more important ones is these tools here, which you can also find in Pathfinder. Not Pathfinder, Align, right here. So I'm not going to explain these. The program actually tells you what they do. You'll see when you hover over things, it says align horizontal and center. Again, you really have to start using the program in order to understand it. And don't be discouraged by all the tools that I'm explaining to you. Again, once you get started, it's not hard at all. And all the programs basically have very similar tools. Adobe makes it very easy to follow along. And again, there's a whole ton of tutorials out there. So for me, I want to do a sticker sheet. And this sticker sheet is going to be called Phantomu Art Box Cafe. And I usually use Sweet Talk as my font. So I want it to be bigger in terms of the font. Right now it is with using the text tool here, it is at 12 points. I can do this two ways. I can either change the number up here to say 200, and you'll see that, oh, it doesn't fit in this box. Well, then you have to move the box out. And the way you do that is take the anchor point and the selection tool and move the anchor point over. But as you can see, it's now bleeding off of the stage, so this is too big. So let's make it 50. Okay, it fits in the box, but now the box is going off of the page. So in order to fix this or fit this box to page, you can right-click it and put Fit to Page, or you can do the Command Option C or Control Option C if you're on a PC, and it'll automatically fit the box to the text. The other way to do it, much easier way to do it, here we go, is to click Command Option or Control Option C, and then click Shift Command or Shift Control and pull the anchor point to the size that you want. This will automatically scale whatever's in that box. So let's see here. It's a little bit big, and again, anytime you want to rescale it, you just hold down Shift and Command or Shift and Control if you're on a PC, and then arrange it so, you know, and I have my smart guides on, so if you go to Window and you go to, actually go to View and you go to Guides, I have Snap to Guides, Lock Column Grids, and Smart Guides. So Snap to Guides will have your objects snap to a grid. It's an imaginary grid that's already in the program. Smart Guides will show you like where the center of the page is, and you'll see a line show up anytime you're moving something. I encourage you to have it on unless you're doing like really sharp movements for an object or you're aligning something. So these three are good to have on, and they should be on when you open the program. So Smart Guide, you can see already, it's showing me and guiding me to the center of the page. So I'm going to leave that. Okay, well, that's nice and all, but I want my text to be a different color. I take my text tool and I click Command or Control A, which is Command or Control All, and I can change a color. So I want it to be maybe a pink color. There. You know, or maybe just here. So I have a color swatch here, so if you go to swatches, and again, if you don't have swatches, you can go to Window and click color, and that should, and then swatches, and this box will show up here with automatic colors inside of it. So I'm gonna highlight that and make it pink. Now, if you want to, for this project, I've already done stickers. So I have a folder on my desktop that has these stickers. What you can do is take imagery or any kind of like JPEG, PNG, GIF file that you've copied and pasted from online, and you can do the same thing that I'm doing right now, and you can follow along that way. But for these, I just have them in a folder. So I want to place this image into this program. Well, how do you do that? You basically, you can do it more than one way. I like to do this. Drag and drop it. So let me show you that again. You basically drag the image onto the stage, and once you've dragged it, it shows up with this little image icon and a little bracket. Then you click on the stage and it shows up. It shows up as its natural size, which is about 7 by 7 inches, which I don't want it to be that big. So I'll make it 2 inches. Yeah, 2 inches. But again, you can see that it's not fitting to the box. So again, how we fit it is Option Command or Option Control E. And that automatically fits it to the box. If you want the box to fit and you want to scale it together, again, that is Shift Command or Shift Control, hold down, and then drag your mouse with the selection tool. So again, I don't want to go beyond my margin, but I want him to be a little bit bigger. Another thing you'll find too in the program when you're doing this, these lines show up and they can be super distracting. I find them distracting, and I am not really seeing the actual layout that's supposed to be there. So I like to hide this. These are called frame edges. So in order to do that, I believe it is View, and gotta find it. Yeah, extras, hide from edges. Now, as I said, I don't know all the key commands within InDesign. I know some of them, enough to do my job. So yeah, here. We're going to make this bigger. And that's one sticker right there. So if you want to see the grid, you can click Control and then the quotation marks, and that'll show up with the grid. That's either Command or Control. If you want to see this without these lines and you don't want to do it in preview, you can click Command or Control if you're on a PC, semicolon, and that'll make the lines disappear. So I want to add in some more stickers. So that was one way to do it, where I dragged and dropped it from the folder. That's probably the easier way to do it. The other way to place an item is to do Command or Control D, and it'll bring up the window. And you can go to your wherever that folder is. You can click on this. And the good thing about going with the Command D or File Place, you can click Show Import Options. So what this does is when you open the program, it gives you some options here that you wouldn't get otherwise by dragging and dropping it onto the stage. So here you use transparent information or a white background, the image, but I don't really need to do that, so we're just going to click OK. And again, this is too big, so let's go to Command Option E, and then you can hold down Shift Command or Shift Control to scale the object. And it's not quite as big as the other guy. So let's put him here. Let's put this one here and use my smart guide to center it. And put this guy over here and make him a little bit bigger. Now another thing you can do in this program, you can copy paste the same image. So if you click Command C or Control C and then Command V or Control V, it'll create a duplicate of the image. And you can also do this thing where, since the image is already there, you can place another image in that box. So if I drag and drop another image and drag it into that box, it'll replace the image. Now let me show you that again. So say you selected this box, you want another image there, you drag and drop it, and there you go. Now again, he's too big, so I gotta make him a bit smaller. And I'll put him up here. Okay. Then let's do that again. Command Control C, Command Control V. And let's put cat number 4 over here. So I like this cat facing this way and this cat facing this way. I'm gonna plus this window so you can see it. Now another thing that I forgot to mention about this program is that there's the box, the selection tool, there's this blue box that you can move around. But I forgot to mention that when you do have the direct selection tool selected, there's a box within that box, which is where the image is housed. This is the original image. Now, what that does is basically in the blue box, you can move this image around as you see fit. It could get cut off, but if you don't want that and you want it to be centered, you would go up top and you would click Center Content to get it back to the way that it was. Or you can do Command Z until you get it back to the way that it was. So again, we want that in our margin. Okay, we're going to move this over, and I have little desserts that I want to put on here. So here's some cupcakes. And again, the cupcake is too big, so we can either, again, hold down Shift Command or Shift Control and bring it down a size. I think this should be super tiny, so I'm going to put this, and see how when you have these anchor points, it creates these little things. This is just, you can basically rotate the box if you want, but you can also rotate it up here by putting in a number, or you can rotate it 90 degrees. This does it either way. Now, if you have any questions, and I'm sure that you will after this tutorial, because this is just a beginner tutorial to show you where these tools are and get yourself familiar with how to do this project, or rather how to use the program. This is just to get you familiar with it. It's not by any means getting you to be an expert in it. What I would suggest that you do, and what I'll probably put in the description, are some images that you can use to try and play around the way that I am playing around right now. I'm not going to give the sticker images because that is for my shop, so, but I wanted to show you what this program can do and what it's used for. So I'm doing the same thing that I did with the others, where I'm going to rotate that a little bit. Okay, and then the Sunday. Again, too big, so Shift Control or Shift Command. Oops. So you'll see too that there's a circle in the middle here, which also, without having to click the direct selection tool, without having to click this one, you can move it around inside without having to go to this tool. That's what that's for. Okay, go to the move tool. Let's move this over here. And then I think the last thing I made was the cafe latte, so. And I think that this should be flipped. So I'm going to use the flip horizontally tool, and I'm going to rotate this a little bit so that it has, I'm going to rotate this as well. And I think I'm going to swap the cupcakes out from below. So let's do this. And let's make the donuts a little bit smaller. Let's rotate this way. So again, the little handlebar, you can drag it back and forth, but it has to show the handlebar in order for you to do that, and you can move it over. So now that I have the stickers laid out relatively the way that I want it, I'm going to put a background in the back. Not green, so if, say, I don't want the border for one, I would click on this box that looks like a line. So go to swatches, click on the box, and then click none. So I don't want that. Then I want this to reach the bleed edge. So I can do this by dragging the anchor points on the side and refitting this to the red marks. And they should snap into place, because if you went to viewed and guides here, and these three are here, it should snap right to the line. Now I want this box to be pink, but that's a little too bright. So you can do it two ways. You can either go double click the color and bring down the magenta, cyan, yellow, or black. You can bring down the magenta by 80, but that will change the swatch. So if you don't want to change the swatch, but you want the color to be tinted or to be 80%, you can go to up here in the swatch panel and put 80%, and that'll lighten it up. Now, this is covering my objects, and obviously I don't want this one in front of my objects, I want it behind my objects. So in order to do that, you can go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back, or you can use the key command that they put here. So this text now, I want it to be white. I don't want it to be pink because it's now being hidden. So you can do that two ways. You can select the text and then put white here, or you can go here, select the formatting text box and click paper. So now when I look at this, this is how the sticker sheet will look. So that's basically how you do this. I'm going to save this file as, so I go to File, Save As, and we'll call this Phantomu Art Box Sticker Cat Cafe Sticker Sheet 6 by 4, and then the date is April, I don't even know what day it is today, April 8th, 2022. I always name my files like this. I know it's ridiculously long, but I always name my files with the name of the file, what it is exactly, the size of the file, and the date. This helps me keep track of my files. And then where you want to save it, you can choose. I'm going to save it to the desktop. And again, you can save it as the 2021 InDesign document, or you can save it down for somebody else if you need to. So I'm going to save. Now, with any project that you do in InDesign, once you have a layout that you like, you don't want to lose the files that are in this layout. These images are linked to this folder here. So if I were to move or delete this folder, all of these images would be broken links, and you wouldn't be able to find it at all. So InDesign does this thing where it packages everything in one. And I highly encourage you to do that anytime you have a project, because if you open the project again, you don't want to have to look for all of the files that you had placed on your stage. So to do that, after you've saved your file, you go to File, Package. Now, this box will come up, and there'll be some things that it says, like right now it says I have 8 RGB color space. Now that's because I had saved my files as PNGs, and I will probably save them as PSDs later to make them CMYK, because this is going to be printed. And anything printed needs to be printed either in spot color or CMYK. RGB is basically for web, for screen viewing. But yeah, so I'll fix this later, but this is where you can see in a summary what's wrong with your file. So say a font is missing, or a link is missing, or an image isn't showing up, like it's showing up in the file but it's not actually there. This is where you would see it missing. Another thing you can look at is underneath here, it should say no errors. So if it has an error here, that means that there's something wrong with your file. So say like, oh, the text isn't showing up. It says, oh, there's one error. So this program is very intuitive to tell you that there's something wrong with your file. So you can see that here, and then if I put it back to what it was, and again, if your box is too big for your text or content, you would Option Control or Option Command C. And again, no errors. So we're going to go back to File, and we're going to package this. Now, it's asking me to save again. Sure. I want to save this to the desktop. You can choose your selections here. I want to include an IDML. The IDML is basically your save down file. So if somebody else wants to open this in CS4 or a version of 2018 of InDesign, they can by using the IDML file. I also include a PDF just so that I have a quick view of what I'm looking at and what I was working on. You want the fonts, you want the links, you want the updated links in the package. You can click these if you want, you don't have to. You can also select whether or not the PDF should be high quality or small file size. That's totally up to you. I usually leave it at high quality. So if I package this and wait, I now have a folder here that has now neatly packaged everything. So now I have a PDF, I have the original InDesign file, and I have a file that will say is saved down a version. I also have all of the links that are used inside of this file. And InDesign has also been kind enough to put in the font that I was using, so that if somebody else in another computer needs to open this file, they wouldn't have to look for the font. It's already in this packaged folder. So anytime you're doing a project, make sure, like in InDesign, make sure that you package it after you're finished. And that's pretty much it. So that's a brief introduction into InDesign and a small little project to show what InDesign can do for you. This can also be laid out in Illustrator. I have no reservations about that. Yes, you can use Illustrator to do the same thing that I just did. But I prefer InDesign just because it packages everything neatly. I don't have to go looking for it, and once it's finished, it's neatly filed, and if I want to go back to it, nothing is missing. So this sticker sheet is probably going to be available on the shop. It's not finished. I'm probably going to do some more things to the background after. But yeah, that's pretty much InDesign. If you have any questions whatsoever about InDesign, and that's a more extensive question, feel free to ask me. But again, this is just a short tutorial on, I guess it wasn't that short, was it? But yeah, it's somewhat short. There are some things on this side here I didn't discuss, but I won't get into detail about it. They basically, I don't know, maybe I should get into detail about it. So, pages. I'll talk about pages because that's very important. You have a master page. Now, what a master page does is, say you've typed, "Hello world," here. Well, because you've typed it on your master page, any page you create after that master page is going to say "Hello world." This is good for page numbering, or if you have a title that you want on every single page that's the same in the same spot, you don't have to copy paste it. This is perfect for that. Using a master page to create a template, and a page number, and then dragging and dropping as many pages as you want below, and having it be in the same spot. That's what you would want to use your master pages for. And you can create multiple master pages. So there's one master page, then you can duplicate master page A, and you can type in "Goodbye world." So say A has "Hello world" and B has "Goodbye world." So you can apply A to page 2 and you can apply B to page 3. So when you click on these pages here, you're going to see "Hello world," "Goodbye world," depending on which master page you've applied. So if you've applied A to here, it'll say "Hello," it'll say "Goodbye." That's if you need two different layouts. Oftentimes, this is because they have, for magazines, they have a page number on the left-hand side, a page number on the right-hand side, and then they have a title on one page and they have a title on another page, but they don't want to have to keep retyping it. And this is why they use master pages. They're very handy. So I don't want all these pages, I only want page 1. I'm going to delete, which again, the delete's here. You can add pages here as well. And this is the editing size. So we can delete this. I'm going to delete "Hello world." I'm going to delete the master page. You can right click and it'll give you options. So delete master page B. Another thing about pages, you can have more than one size in a document. As I said, these programs are very, very extensive. They can do a lot of things. This is another thing that you may want to know, and it's handy when you're doing, say, social media graphics, for instance, or IAB graphics for Google that are multiple sizes. You can set different sizes in InDesign, a bunch of different stages and different sizings for all of your ads. So say you want to advertise on Instagram, but Instagram is 1080p by 1080p, it's a square. And then you want to advertise on Facebook, but Facebook is landscape, it's not a square. So, you want to advertise the same artwork, but you want to advertise it on multiple platforms. Well, being able to customize the pages in InDesign is actually very handy. So say I want to have this size as the next page, right? And then I want to have another size as the next page. So if I add another page and I want this to be a different size, so custom letter half, right? Okay. And then afterwards, say for social media, I want LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram stories, and they're all different sizes. So if I've set all of my sizes in the custom pages and they're showing up here, I can select Command or Control E, or I can go under File, Export, and then I can export them as JPEGs, and I can export all of them at once. Instead of doing one at a time in Photoshop and having to copy paste the same design, I don't have to do that if I'm in InDesign and all of my pages are there in one document. So this is an easy way to do static graphics within all of your social media. And that was way more information than you needed to know, but it's a good tidbit to know for future reference. So that is basically pages. You can also allow to shuffle and allow to select pages. And then if you add a new page, that allows you to put the pages as facing pages. So I created, and facing pages, as you know, is magazine side by side layout or any kind of book. So that I basically did that by doing allow document pages to shuffle and allow selected spread to shuffle, added a new page, and then basically once you see a bracket and you've dragged this page over, it pretty much puts it beside it. If you don't want this page beside there, you just wait until you just drag it off to the, hang on. You have to make sure that you select the right page or it doesn't work. So you make sure there's a line instead of this, a line, and it'll separate the pages. Alternately, you can also go back to File, Document Setup, and you can select facing pages here. So if you had created your stage and you didn't like what you created, you don't want it to be 4x6, you want it to be 8.5 by 11, you can go back to Document Setup and fix it here. Same thing with the bleed and everything else. This thing has layers as well, so say you want your stickers to be on a separate layer than your background, you can do that here. The links will show you where your images are linked from. And when you modify it, it gives you all this information. The align, you already know, it aligns these items together. So say I want this to be centered, it aligns it. And this also shows up top here as well. Stroke is the stroke of the box. I believe you saw that earlier where I had the shape and then the stroke was there and I got rid of it. This is another way to get rid of it. I'm not going to get into this because there's way more in there as well. Again, gradient, color, you can fix the color, you can view it in RGB, lab, HSB, whichever color you want. I'm using print, so I'm in CMYK. Swatches, Pathfinder. Pathfinder is very similar to Illustrator. So if you've seen my tutorial on Illustrator, which I will leave a link up top, it shows you what Pathfinder does. It's very similar in InDesign as Illustrator. Then the transform, which I explained, is up here as well. And then character, paragraph. You can make character styles. So if you're doing a booklet again, you can create a paragraph style that goes across all of your pages. You can create a character style where all the fonts are the same, and then you just need to click the style to make the fonts the same on the next page. Glyphs or special characters. Effects too is very, very extensive. There's a lot you can do with it. If you double click, it's like Photoshop where it has drop shadow, inner shadow, outer glow, etc. Then background tasks is, say if I were to export this as a JPEG and it was a big file and I want to know how long it's taking, this will come up with the taskbar and I'll show you the percentage of how long it's taking to render out all of those files. But obviously right now we're not rendering anything, so there's nothing there. And there's a lot more boxes in here, a lot more utilities that could be put over here that are in under window. So like say article, you could drag and drop it and put it in here. I don't use this, so I take it away. What I highly suggest you do when you open your InDesign, take a look at these, explore them, and see which ones you use the most. And whichever ones you use the most, put them on your side toolbar here, and then save your workspace. You can create a new workspace and save it. And then every time you open your InDesign, those tools that you use all the time will show up the way that my tools are showing up, or however you've set it up. And I highly recommend you do that when you start your projects to make sure that you have a workspace that works for you. And that's it. That's pretty much it for InDesign. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me down below. And if you've liked the content, feel free to like and subscribe. I will leave some images in the description for you to use to place onto the stage, and you can follow along. You don't have to have the same images I use. You can use whatever images you like and just arrange them and play in the program with me. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one.